DICE is a fairly big company. Maybe they don't have the same resources as a studio like Infinity Ward, but they should have enough money to hire somebody with common sense to stop DICE from derailing all their hype with piss poor game patches and new features that are mere shells of what was actually promised. RSP, the rental server program, aka private games, aka community games, is now live, if you can even call it that. Basically, the feature is technically in the game, so you can't say that DICE didn't meet their deadline in promising to have it out before the end of the year. However, expected features of being able to create cool custom game modes with weapon restrictions, round time limits, hardcore options, infantry-only settings, permanent servers, custom server names, settings for competitive play, and basically anything that's been available in just about every single previous Battlefield game are nowhere to be found. They have been promised for the future, but then again there's a long list of promised features for Battlefield 5 that will never actually be in this game. Rest in peace Firestorm's looting fix. One might even ask the question, what is the point of having community games released without any of these things people actually wanted? Setting custom map rotations is about it, but then you can't even market your server with the title, letting people know that it's infantry-only maps, or large-scale conquest vehicle-oriented maps, or flying maps only. DICE also disabled Tides of War progression in all community game servers, but ironically, many of the custom games are now being used to stat boost people through their golden weapon skin assignments that were previously borderline impossible to get. So DICE went out of their way to make sure that people don't cheese the Tides of War stuff, but they're fine with people cheesing their insanely difficult golden weapon assignments. Well, I doubt that was their intention, but obviously this was overlooked. Just like DICE overlooked the actual assignment writing for over a year now, which is so awful and tiresome that it's actually caused people to exploit their way through them. And for those of us that spent tireless hours completing DICE's terrible assignments, well, we're now gifted with the knowledge that some of the community is just exploiting their way through them in minutes using DICE's gimped community games feature. And that's just what happened yesterday. The 5.2 patch that launched this week has broken many more elements of the game. The new spotting system shows people through smoke, fences, and even thin building walls. Apparently, weapon unlocks and other progression features of the game just simply aren't tracking, so for newer adopters of the game, they're literally unable to progress and get new items. DICE forgot to revert one of their weapons to the 5.2 damage stats, making it significantly better than its competitors. The slower time to kill also really emphasizes just how crap Battlefield 5's netcode still is, since one-frame deaths still occur, and over half the guns in the game just aren't competitive or enjoyable anymore, thanks to the half-baked balance changes. Even speaking as somebody who enjoyed Battlefield 1's time to kill and can respect some of the ideas behind this update, it's still an embarrassing attempt to try and convince the community that this is the way forward. How did this patch pass inspection? Who is giving the orders over at DICE? I know for a fact that some of the developers who played this update before launch thought it was extremely bad, and yet it still got pushed through. I guess not everyone at DICE has their heads up their asses, but just the ones making the important decisions. Oh yeah, don't forget Firestorm, DICE's bastard child that the company is seemingly trying to snuff out with a pillow by canceling future support. Well, Firestorm, of which there is still a weird diehard fan base, got the exact same TTK changes. So if you thought the guns felt like Nerf blasters in the base game, wait until you run into someone with level 3 armor in Firestorm. Trying to chew through 300 hit points with a gun that drops off to 10 damage at range? It's laughably bad, and anyone at DICE would have known this was going to be the case if there was anyone actually checking in and saying, are you guys also going to apply this TTK change to this completely different mode that already has its own balance? It's hard for me to imagine that nobody actually asked that question or thought about it, but here we are looking at Firestorm with the TTK update, having basically ruined what was left of this game mode. It's very difficult to be a Battlefield fan at present day. Now, I've been watching DICE screw up for years. They don't have a great track record for quality assurance with their patches, but they do at least fix their games, and in a sense that builds confidence that they will eventually make things right. But it's been over a year since Battlefield 5's launch, and there's been more bad patches than good patches at this point. The game is better than it was a year ago, but that's not really saying much considering just how trashy it was at launch. In fact, the only true good update in my opinion was the Pacific update that made Battlefield feel like Battlefield again. And really at this point I should be waiting on the edge of my seat for the remake of Wake Island and the release of The Bar on Thursday, but all I can think about is, oh god, is The Bar just gonna get ruined like the FG42 did? Is Wake Island even going to be fun with the extremely stripped down weapon options that are now available? For those of you hoping that this whole patch would just get a rollback, well, it doesn't look like that will happen. The community managers and some producers are already suggesting that DICE is working on making changes to the system rather than a total reversion. Now, from my perspective, again, someone who does appreciate a slightly longer TTK, I can understand this rationale, but it simply doesn't excuse using the game as a testbed for weapons. Again, if 5.2 is what DICE actually thought was a well-tested and balanced update, then what possible hope do I have for their future internal testing? CTE, the community test environment, has never been needed more. Battlefield Hardline had a CTE, but this game, DICE's flagship, doesn't? The ongoing joke is that we've been playing CTE the whole time, which honestly isn't much of a joke, but just the hard facts. An 18-month dev cycle doesn't produce a finished game, and we're playing the game over a year after launch, at which point DICE would normally be getting this game ready to ship. And instead of just working on and refining the core features and core maps this whole time, they've also been trying to stay on top of their promised content, which they've, well, failed to meet at almost every single deadline. And when they do actually hit a deadline, it's almost always underwhelming in terms of the quantity of content or the quality of content. Hence this community games release. Hence the entire Chapter 4, and well, just about everything before that. Right now, the Pacific content is like an oasis in the middle of a desert of crap. It's been the only truly good thing to happen to this game since launch, and even then, I think the Pacific content is underwhelming in terms of quantity. Most Battlefield DLCs in the past would have been a package of 4 maps all released at once. We're getting these 4 maps staggered out over the course of a much longer period of time because, well, DICE hasn't finished them yet. At least the Pacific content has been about a month of me actually enjoying Battlefield 5, but now it feels again like I'm fighting back against crappy updates and game ruining decisions. We're supposed to play this game for 2 more years, and I keep waiting for DICE to stop tripping over their own feet. But something is rotten in the ranks of that studio. Historically, even at its worst, DICE just hasn't been this bad, and they haven't put forward this many problem patches. I've been there for pretty much all of it, so I do remember the good and the bad, and this is the worst. I always try to be someone who can look at both sides of the equation. I try not to judge a situation until I've heard both sides of the story, and I believe that truly good game developers can generally have a better understanding of what their game needs than their community does. But DICE is overlooking the fundamental problem that they've created, which is building a community that enjoys the current feeling of the game. If you wanted a longer time to kill, it should have been done at launch, and you should have stood by that balance then. Instead, you're trying to shoehorn it into a game that's been out for over a year. And guess what? The people who still play your game, the community you've built, do not like it. And if this patch is your best attempt at showing everyone that you can balance the game better with a slower time to kill, then you have failed miserably. You don't take people's favorite weapons and turn them into completely unusable guns without some backlash. You don't take iconic World War II weapons that many people were excited to use and play with and turn them into guns that just aren't going to be enjoyable or won't be able to compete with the better weapons out there. DICE is preparing a statement to go live sometime on or before Thursday regarding their path forward. And I'm not really sure what to expect from them at this point. If they say that they're not going to revert the 5.2 patch, then the only way forward is to try and balance out the poorly balanced weapons in this game, which I would say is about 70 to 80% of the guns in the game right now. That's a lot of weapon balance to do, and considering that this was their first take in it, you can imagine I don't have a huge amount of confidence in their second take, or even their third take. Maybe by the 4th or 5th take, things will start to feel a bit better. And although many people would say weapon balance is an ongoing process for the lifetime of a game, which I do believe to be somewhat true, You don't want to be this far off of your mark this far into a game's development. We can only wait and see what DICE has in store for the rest of Battlefield 5. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you next time. This is Level Cap, signing off.